Hello everybody and welcome to my kitchen. My name's Andrew Day. Now normally I'm out in the garage talking about my car, but today I'm in the kitchen and I'm going to be showing you a really fantastic roast meal. Something that's going to be perfect for Sunday if you are a vegetarian or even if you're not a vegetarian. Now I'll tell you about this as I go. I'm going to start off with some leeks here and prepare these and tell you about the meal as I go. Now let's get pan on heat there. So I'm going to put that on, I think 7 out of 10. There we go. And a little dash of olive oil. There we go. Now, if you're a vegetarian like me, the one thing you probably miss more than anything is Sunday roast. Now I remember before I turned vegetarian just how much I really used to love Sunday roast, particularly roast leg of lamb, chicken on the spit. Really loved it. And I tried nut roasts, ones you buy from the shop. I've even tried ones that I've heard recipes off the radio or whatever on TV and really not been impressed with anything. But this recipe really does invoke the same feelings in me that I used to get from eating leg of lamb or spit chicken. And it's got mushrooms, leeks, cream cheese, Gruyere cheese, sweet chili sauce and some nuts. And let me show you how I do it. So we've got the pan on heat and we're going to start with the leeks. I've got 2 leeks here, 1 packet. In fact, the whole philosophy of this recipe is that you use everything by the packet. So I really hate it when, you know, a recipe calls for 70 grams of cream cheese and you look at the packet and it's, you know, it's a packet of 200 grams. So you end up with a load of cream cheese left over. Everything is by the packet. So it's 1 pack of cream cheese, 1 pack of Gruyere, 1 packet of mushrooms, can be either button mushrooms or chestnut mushrooms in this case, and 1 pack of leeks, or you can buy them individually as you wish. So I'm going to start with the leeks and get those on the go. So cut off the ends, and what I'm going to do is slice that right down from top to bottom. There we go. And just discard the heavy green ends. That's it. And then I'm going to cut those into 1 centimetre pieces. Like that. And get those in the frying pan. There we go. Now I'm just going to cook these until they've softened. And I'm going to break them up so that they're not all still in their halves. So you want them into individual pieces. So that's, as I say, on a medium-high heat. The other thing about vegetarian Sunday roasts is how they are presented. When you take a nut roast, in order for it to hold together, it has to be quite dry, and then you slice it and it is quite dry. So the thing about this recipe is that it's very moist, very gooey, but the presentation is not like a dollop of the mixture on your plate. That would be very unattractive. Now I've got 3 suggestions on how to serve this. I used to always make phyllo pastry parcels. So I'd get phyllo pastry from the supermarket obviously, and I would about 3 sheets all buttered together and then wrap the mixture up in the middle. But I found that was quite a bit of a faff actually. But also I love Yorkshire puddings, who doesn't? And I had the idea of what about putting this mixture into a Yorkshire pudding. So you've got a stuffed Yorkshire pudding, and you'll see that is just an excellent way to present it. Now this recipe that I'm showing you is for either 6 or 8 portions, depending on how many you want to break it down to. I used to always divide the mixture into 6, but it was quite a generous portion, so I've cut it down to an 1/8 per portion, and it's a bit more manageable, especially with all the roast potatoes and all the trimmings and everything. So already the leeks here, the first batch of leeks, are getting towards, I think I'll just bring that down a little bit so they don't burn whilst I do the second leek. So there, so the first batch of leeks is ready. So I've got a bowl here to put them into. So put the softened leeks into the bowl, get them all out. Voila. Another dash of oil. And then the second batch of leeks, and repeat. So we just soften those up, and whilst these are softening up, then I'm going to get on with preparing the mushrooms. So these need to be sliced up, which you can do in the normal way. So half and then slices, and go through the whole box. There's 4, how many grams are there here? That is 400 and something grams. Where is that? 485 grams. But a packet of 400 grams would have been enough. That's quite a generous portion. How much was there in the... I didn't look at the packet for the... Let's have a look. Here we are. The leeks. That was 500 grams. There we go. So, chop up the mushrooms, or I've got a little trick for this. Now then, this is an egg slicer, and what you can do with this, you put in a mushroom, lie it in there, bing, there you go, sliced mushrooms. Clever, right? Okay, so these leeks are now coming up to softened and ready to be turned out into the bowl. There we go. And then I can fry the mushrooms. So that's all the leeks done. I'm not going to put any oil in this time. I'm just going to put some garlic in. And whilst of course you can chop your own garlic, but I'm going to be very lazy and put a teaspoon of chopped garlic from a jar. There we go. Now I can put in the first batch of chopped onion, chopped mushrooms. One's for the bin. And again, on number 7, a fairly high heat, and just turn those now and again to get them cooked through and softened. Okay, whilst that's doing, I'm going to prepare some nuts. Whatever nuts you fancy, whatever nuts you've got in the house, it's fine. There's absolutely no bad nuts that you could put in, except maybe peanuts. So I think that might be a flavour too far. So I'm going to use pecans and walnuts, and I've also, I think, got some flaked almonds I could put in there as well. So I'm going to take a handful of pecan halves, and I'm just going to break them. And what I do is I break into 4. Again, with the rounded side facing towards you, press, and it breaks into 4. Now you could chop them with a knife, but then you end up with some big bits, some small bits, and I find it's just the right size to break it into 4. So each one, it doesn't take long to do a little bowlful, and I'm not going to say there's a specific quantity there, it's just like a handful. There we go. And then I'm also going to do some walnuts. I think these are already broken up into pieces, so yeah, just make them into manageable pieces like that. Because if they're too small, you haven't got a bite to them. That's the other thing about vegetarian food. It can often be much too soft and nothing to bite into. You know, a mushroom risotto, what is there to bite? You want something to crunch, and this gives it the perfect texture. So going back to the mushrooms, there we are, nicely softened, and just a hint of brown on them would be nice. You can see why we didn't need any oil, because they're pretty moist, just fried in a dry pan. So that's the first batch of mushrooms done, and I'm going to pop those into the bowl on top of the leeks that I fried up earlier, and then it's the second batch of mushrooms which I haven't prepared yet, so I better crack on with those. So again, either slice or the egg slicer, and oh not the cooked ones, I want the uncooked ones. Really won't take long like this. Hopla. There we go, that's the whole batch chopped and in the pan. And this recipe, like all recipes, shouldn't be written in stone. If you want to play around with it, tweak it, add something, take something away. I mean, if you don't like garlic, you don't like garlic. But for me, after years and years of tweaking, I think I've come up with the perfect recipe. And I've tried it out on people who are carnivores, and they've come for dinner and they've thoroughly enjoyed it. Nobody ends up going, oh, where's my meat? You know, I doubt they're being polite, but I think genuinely a meat eater will be very, very pleased with this roast. Make sure they're all broken into slices. Okay, so we've got a little bowl of nuts there. Let's finish those off. I'll weigh those for you just to give you an idea of how much I've put in. So I reckon that's about enough there. So let's see what we've got. And we've got 54 grams. I think that's going to do it. Yeah, about 50 grams or thereabouts. So the final batch of mushrooms are coming up for being done. Now, I wouldn't contemplate doing this recipe for 2 people. It's just not worth it. It's so much faff for one meal, but it's a very small amount of trouble to go to for 8 meals. So I make up a batch for 8 portions, and then I freeze 6. Now, whether or not you want to make 6 portions or 8 portions out of a batch, that's up to you, depending on whether you want a big portion or a small portion. So try it, see how you get on. So these mushrooms are now getting to being soft. We don't want them cooked too much. After all, they are going to go in the oven eventually. And I reckon that's about it. Might want to drain that off. So what I can do is use a sieve and drain them off over the sink. There we go, so they're not quite so wet. Okay, now that the final batch of mushrooms is done, I can return it all to the pan. And again, I'll try not to, there's some water in there, some juice rather. So we'll leave that in the bowl and just take out the leeks and mushrooms. There we go. So we've got a little bit of juice there that we don't need. And that's that done. So get it all together. And now we can turn the heat off. So I'm going to turn the heat off completely. I'm going to throw those nuts in. And now the next thing is a packet of soft cheese. Now I've tried the expensive brand cheeses and I don't think it's worth it. This is an own brand and it's about half the price of the famous one and it's just as good. I think it's just as good. So the whole pot goes in, no waste. So plonk it in and then we're going to break it up and mix it up. Right, so that's the cream cheese mixed in, a little bit like making concrete here. So it takes a fair bit of stirring to get the cream cheese really in all the nooks and crannies of the mixture until it's a very even mix, looking nice and smooth and creamy. There we are. And then when that's all mixed up, then we go for the secret ingredient. Now, I tried this recipe without the secret ingredient, but it just wasn't the same. This is sweet chili sauce, and it really adds a bite. Something, it's hard to describe what it adds. It's not going to end up tasting like a Chinese sweet chili dish. It just gives it another flavour, gives it depth of flavour. And I've never actually measured how much I put in. I just glug some in. But for the benefit of the film, what I'll do is I'll weigh the bottle, I shall glug some in, and then we shall see how much there actually goes in. So that is 76 grams. So we've got about 80 grams of sweet chili sauce in there. The measurement doesn't have to be exact, just sort of glug some in, I would say. You won't really know until you eat it how strong that's going to be, because the flavours will develop as they cook, but we can give it a try. Oh yeah, that's good, and that's got a kick. So that is the mixture pretty much made up. Well, not pretty much, that is made up. The only thing we're going to have in addition to that, apart from the Yorkshire puddings that it's going to be presented in, is the Gruyere cheese, but we don't put that on until later when they actually come out of the oven. So we're going to put that mixture on one side and we're going to let that cool. So the next thing we're going to do is portion it up. So you can do it by eye if you want to, but I like to make sure I'm completely accurate, so I'm going to do it by weight and divide it on the calculator. So I've put this bowl onto the scales and set it to 0, and then I put the whole mix into the bowl. Let's really clean out that pan. There we go, and that gives us our total mixture, which is 1061 grams. And it would be a lot easier doing it in grams than it would be in doing it in pounds and ounces. So our American friends can try this in grams perhaps. 10,060 divided by 8 is 132.5, but I'm going to put them into batches of 2, so times 2 is 265, so 265 per 2 portions. So let's get my cuppers out. And we're looking for 265 grams per 2 portions. So 265 is the magic number. 254, 60, whoop, there we go, 265, magic. And the last portion I'm going to put into a Pyrex dish, because that's what I'm going to actually heat it up in the oven. So let's pop that in there, and 256, yeah, it's very, very nearly there. There we are. Just flatten that out a little bit. Now I'm actually filming this on Saturday and I'm making these in advance, so we're going to have our roast tomorrow, Sunday lunchtime. So I'm going to put that in the fridge, and that will only need about half an hour, if that, in the oven to cook through and still soften the leeks just a little bit more. But before I put the other portions into the freezer, which I've got here, I'm going to portion up the cheese. Right, so it's time for the Gruyere. Now this is a pack of Gruyere Reserve from Tesco, and it was £4. It's quite expensive, and you may be tempted to use cheddar or a less expensive cheese. Now, having said earlier that the cream cheese, I've tried the more expensive brands, doesn't seem to make any difference. When it comes to the Gruyere, it has to be Gruyere. It's the flavour that really gets into this recipe and makes it so lovely. I wouldn't use cheddar or a less expensive cheese in this recipe. So take your slab of Gruyere, and this is a pack of 195 grams, but however it comes for you. In fact, I might not actually use all of that. I might just leave a little bit left over like that, just as a treat, because oh my lord, it is so delicious. It's really nutty. Oh, that's worth having on its own. Anyway, but we've got plenty here, so this is what I do. So first of all, I cut the rinds off.
Put your hand in front of it.
There we go. So, cut the rinds off. So we're going to divide this into 8. So it's half, half, half. So 4, and then again all into half. So 8 portions of Gruyere. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put 2 of these on each 2 portions of the mixture, but the important thing is to wait until this is cold. When this is room temperature, then you can put the cheese on top. You don't want it melting before you put it in the freezer. So, and that's it for the pre-preparation. Tomorrow I'm just going to make roast potatoes, Yorkshire puddings, and then the mixture. I'll show you what we're going to do tomorrow. It's very, very simple. All the hard work is done. It's just about the easiest roast dinner you'll ever cook from this point onwards. Gonna have a little bit more of that Gruyere cheese.